Okay, so now that we know what a degree 2 trinomial is, one of the ways that we can factor it is using the AC method. I playfully give it a name. I call it forced grouping. And here's why. Here's the layout, and then I'll show you how we're going to do it. We just learned in section 5.1 that the way to factor a 4-term polynomial, right, is to use the grouping technique. And so when I look at these polynomials right now, they all have just 3 terms. So grouping wouldn't come to mind. But what the AC method does is it gives us a method, it gives us a process where we create a 4th term. And then once we've created that 4th term, we actually turn to our grouping technique. So basically that's the whole idea behind the AC method, is to take a 3-term polynomial, change it to a 4-term polynomial, and then we basically go back to grouping. So AC method. What's nice about this method is the steps are the same ones every single time. All right, so how about I kind of write them over here. So step 1, as the name suggests, what we need to figure out is what's A and C. All right, so in this first problem, A is 1, B is 2, and C is negative 8. So what's AC? What's 1 times negative 8? We get a negative 8. So that's the first step in the process, is to determine what is A times C. The next step is a little bit where we're kind of guessing, but I got to find 2 numbers that when I multiply them together give me the AC we just found, but when I add them together give me the B. Now of course remember, where is B? B is the middle coefficient. All right, and so this is where things get a little hairy. If you're factoring and you're working with numbers, it really comes into play here. So we have to find 2 numbers that when I multiply them together give me negative 8, but at the same time when I add them together give me 2. So their product is the AC and their sum is the middle term. And so if we sit and think about it, right, what 2 numbers can I multiply to get negative 8, but when I add them get you 2? Okay, and when you really think about it hard, the 2 numbers that we need are 4 and negative 2. All right, so their multiplication is negative 8 and their sum is 2. So now we're ready to step 3. So once you've done that, the third step is you want to rewrite the polynomial, all right, with the numbers that you just created. So I'm going to leave the first term alone. I'm going to leave the last term alone, but we're going to rewrite this middle as negative 4x plus 2x. So a couple of pathways we can go here. Notice that if I simplified this, if I combine these 2 terms together, oops, I think I goofed up. I think that needs to be plus and that needs to be minus. Oops, so see, if we were in class, you guys would have caught that. So let me change that. Okay, so there we go. Now I've got it right. Okay, so if I combine these like terms together, right, what I end up with is 2x. Okay, but don't do that, because remember, what did I want to do? I wanted to go from a 3-term situation to a 4-term situation so I can start grouping. And that's exactly what we've done here. By following step 1, step 2, and step 3, I've converted my trinomial to a 4-termer. So how do we factor a 4-termer? We start grouping. Of course, we have to be careful here. I'm grouping around a minus sign now that I corrected that. So we're going to change the signs behind it. And now we're back to the GCF. Out front here it's x, so when I take that out, it's x plus 4. In these next 2, it's a 2. And what gets left behind is x plus 4. There's my minus. On each side, I can see an x plus 4 is common. And so when I factor out, what gets left is x minus 2. And there's your product. Of course, you can check that by foiling it out, right? X times x is x squared. X times a negative 2 is a negative 2x. 4 times x is 4x. And then 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. So you can literally see the FOIL right in there. So there's your product. AC method, I playfully call it forced grouping because that's literally what's happening. We're going through our steps. Oops, I guess I should have stepped step 4 here. right, is factor by grouping. So there's your steps. Some students like this method because you have an identified thing you're supposed to do step by step. Some students hate it because it's a long process. You use what you want to use, especially once I show you the guess and check method. Some of you might love that. So let's keep using the AC method though. So next one, again, to factor this trinomial, we're going to force a fourth term. I do that by first considering what's AC. So in this case, A is 1, B is 7, and C is 10. So my AC in this case is 1 times 10. We get 10. All right, that's a 10 there. So now, second step. Two numbers that when I multiply them together give me AC, 10. And when I add them together give me the B, which is 7. So now we got to put our thinking caps on, right? Think of some factors of 10 that when you add them together gives you a 7, right? And hopefully at home you're thinking, well, that's just 5 and 2. And I'm pretty sure I got this one right, even though I screwed up that last one. So there's your two numbers. What do we use those two numbers for? We're going to use them to rewrite the polynomial. So we're going to leave the first term alone, and we're going to leave the last term alone, and we're going to rewrite the middle term as 5x plus 2x. Again, I'm in balance here because these two terms combine up to 7x. So this trinomial is the same thing as that four-term polynomial. But don't change it back because I have what I want. Right now that I have 4 terms, we can now factor by grouping. So we classic situation where we group the first 2 terms, we're adding, we group the second 2 terms. GCF, well, on the front end the GCF is x, and we're left with x plus 5. On the back 2, the GCF is 2, and we're left with x plus 5. Right, there's my plus sign. On either side of it I have an x plus 5, and what gets left behind is x plus 2. And there's your product. Again, you can literally see the reverse FOIL, right? Because first times first, there's the x squared. The outer, there's your 2x. Your inner, there's your 5x. Your last gives you 10. So we're on the right track. That product creates that trinomial we factored. All right, so AC method. All right, let's do it a couple more times. So in this next one, again, we have 3 terms. I like the AC method, so my first step is figure out what AC is. So here A is 4, B is negative 12, C is 5. Right? So AC in this case would be 4 times 5, which is 20. So we now need to find 2 numbers that when I multiply them together give me 20, but when I add them together give us negative 12. Okay, so a little more challenging this time. So what 2 numbers do that? All right, well, negative 10 and negative 2. Right, that's our choice right there. So negative 10 and negative 2 pretty much do what I want. So on to the next step. What are we going to do? We're going to rewrite our polynomial. So I'm going to leave the first term alone. I'm going to leave the last term alone. And I'm basically going to rewrite the middle term. Now I have 4 terms. Right? And unfortunately we're grouping around a minus sign. So when I group the first 2 together minus the next 2 together, I change signs behind it. Okay? So far so good. Now we're back to the GCF question. Well, out front here it's 2x. And I believe what gets left behind is 2x minus 5. Minus, this is a tricky situation that hasn't come up yet, but we know that everybody has at least a 1 in common. So how about I just put a 1 out in front? It's like we factored out that common 1. And so there's my minus sign. On either side, I can see that the factor that's common, the GCF, is 2x minus 5. And what gets left behind? 2x minus 1. And there, again, is your product. Easy check. There's your FOIL, right? First times first is 4x squared. My outer is a negative 2x. My inner is a negative 10x. And my last is positive 5. So we know we have the right answer. And we're practicing grouping around minus signs. All right, so kind of a lot of things coming together. We're redoing our grouping and in the process of our AC method. So last but not least, right? So A is 2, B is negative 3, and C is negative 5. Right? So what's AC? Well, 2 times negative 5 gives us a negative 10. So what two numbers can we multiply together to give me negative 10? What two numbers can I add together to give me the b, which in this case is negative 3? And when I look at this, the two numbers are actually right here, right? It's negative 5 and 2. So they're already there. And so I'm going to use that. I'm going to use the first term, I'm going to leave it alone. Second term, I'm going to leave it alone. And I'm going to rewrite the middle term as negative 5x plus 2x. There's my four terms. So we're going to factor by grouping. We're grouping around a plus sign, so we got that. Right? What's common here is an x. What gets left behind is 2x minus 5 plus. Again, there's nothing really common per se but the 1. So I'll just write that as 1 times 2x minus 5. We're grouping around a plus sign, and I can see on either side the GCF is 2x minus 5. What gets left behind? X plus 1. And there's your product. Again, a real quick check. First times first is 2x squared. My outer is a 2x. My inner is a negative 5x. Last times last is negative 5, giving me that trinomial. So we're done. So there's your AC method. Usually about half my class ends up loving it and swearing by it. The others like, oh my God, all these steps are crazy. Show me something else. And that's what I'm going to get ready to do. So we'll figure out another way to do all this. Talk to you guys later.